ad at bobwinescamelliagardens.net. Then head on over to Bob Wines daily till 4, Saturdays till 2. Bob Wines Camellia Gardens, Southeast 38th Street, Ocala, in the same blooming place since 1952.
At Earth Fare, we don't carry any food that's bad for you. So you could shop here blindfolded, knowing that everything is 100% clean and good for you. In fact, we carefully select everything in the store as if your life depends on it. Because it does.
Lori from Earth Fare will be on the air during AM Ocala Live, coming this Wednesday at 11:05 a.m. with weekly deals and information just for you.
Live longer with Earth Fare.
Locally owned and operated since 1957. We are The Source, 96.3 FM, 1370 AM.
All right, it is 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Last day of the first half of 2017. Time flies, Robin. Time flies.
It does.
We had this philosophical conversation this morning, you and I and our listeners, and it was based on our next guest. He is Dr. Doug Oliver. He's a geologist, a researcher, an explorer for minerals. He teaches at the college level, a part-time race car driver. And he's written a book called Resuscitation. I have the cover of the book on the podcast that we're live streaming right now, but it'll be a recorded podcast at 2 o'clock today on YouTube and Facebook. It's called Resuscitation and All That Follows. Doug Oliver wrote the book. Here's the part that got us talking. What would you do if you could rewind your life and give yourself a second chance, correct some of the mistakes you made in your life, right? And we had an interesting philosophical conversation about that. Maybe it'd be a bad thing. Maybe the things that made us better were those things that we cringe when we think about, right? You never know. Dr. Doug Oliver, good morning, sir. You got us talking this morning just with that one little sentence. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you today?
We're good. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas.
So tell me about the book. Why is it called Resuscitation?
The book starts in 1965, and it's called Resuscitation because it begins shortly after a fatal car accident a few days before Christmas in 1965. The lead character, his name is Grady Moran, is the sole survivor and had a near-death experience before being resuscitated. So that's where the name comes from.
Is this based on a true story in any way?
No, not really. I've had my fair share of car accidents, but never had to be resuscitated.
But we all have times we wish we could change things. We had this discussion this morning, and I wanted to see if you wanted to go in that direction. It's an interesting thought because, maybe we're here to make mistakes. Maybe the whole purpose of being here, I don't know, this is almost religious in a way, but maybe God wanted us to be here to make mistakes so that we could be better somehow later on. I don't know.
Well, we definitely learn from our mistakes. I don't think there's any question about that. And to the extent, what's the expression? That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. To the extent, that we learn from our mistakes. We do grow. We do become stronger and more mature. But there are still things I think we'd all like to go back and fix, or just never do, or just take the road not followed.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes, like people who join cults, and then then reality sets in, and they realize they were just so dopey to follow that cult. But I think maybe we all follow things. Maybe we followed a musical group, or maybe we were obsessed with a sporting team or something.
Sure. Yeah. And again, there are things that you do that occupy a short period of your life that you get by and you get past, and essentially no harm, no foul. I think there are other things though that we would like to go back and correct if you had a chance.
Like.
For me, it was largely the things I was too fearful to try at the time. The example I like to give is, when I was in high school, buddy and I went to get ice cream at night. And so we're standing in line. And, there's about 10, 15 people there, and there are two guys having a very loud conversation. And it's not a PG-13 conversation. And the rest of us are standing there kind of shell-shocked, just listening to this. You couldn't ignore it. And this one guy was there, and he was short, he was bald, he was middle-aged, looked like he'd ever been to the gym in his life. And he just tore into those two guys. I mean, he just gave them a piece of their mind. And I remember thinking, that was one of the bravest things I think I'd ever seen. The rest of us were just standing there, just too timid to say anything. Uh-huh. But he did. I remember going home that night and thinking, when I grow up, I want to be like that guy. I want to be the guy who's brave enough to actually say something.
Yeah.
I remember the first words out of his mouth was, "How dare you talk that way in front of my daughters?" And it's a good line.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. There's a story in the news today about this guy who stabbed two other guys because this guy was raising his voice at a woman wearing a hijab, I guess is how you pronounce it. And these other two guys came to her defense, and then the bad guy ends up stabbing these two guys. And instead of him recognizing that he did something bad, he's in the press this morning saying he was patriotic. Oh my gosh! So this guy doesn't even realize he made a mistake.
No, that's a pretty amazing story, Larry. I agree with you.
All right, so your book is a novel, correct?
It is.
Okay, but as a novelist, are you exploring this philosophy that we're sort of kind of touching on right now?
That's really the theme of the book. Like I said, the main character, Grady Moran, he returns to his hometown after the accident. He's orphaned. He's living now with foster parents. And we find out in short order that his life hadn't even been that great before the accident. He's failing his classes. He's being bullied. He has no real friends. And what he does is he sets out to reinvent himself. He's less fearful of trying things. He is more mature. And basically he reinvents his life. I mean, this is his do-over. And so it's his opportunity to reinvent himself, and vicariously we can all ask ourselves the same questions. In retrospect, what would you do differently if you had a second chance?
Yeah, really. Does he move to a different physical place?
Well, you mean physically in terms of where he's living?
Yeah.
No, he's still in the same. He's still in the same hometown in rural New Jersey. So he reinvents himself as a person.
Right.
And the hardest thing is getting other people to accept that he is a different person now.
That's what I was getting at. Did you happen to see this movie? It was a really sad movie. It was, what was that movie we saw, Robin, with the family? I don't want to give away anything, but remember the movie saw at the sea, something by the sea?
Oh, Manchester.
Oh, Manchester.
Yeah. Did you happen to see that one?
I did. I caught it on an airplane about a month or so ago. Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Oh, you were bummed out when you landed, weren't you? That was a sad movie. Yeah. So, in Manchester, where the guy was from, he moved away from there because nobody would ever look at him. Not that he did anything. Well, he did make a mistake. Remember, he made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away the story. Yeah. But he made a huge mistake, but it was kind of innocent, forgivable. But yet he didn't want to be back there anymore. That was part of it, right? I don't know.
And I can't say I blame him for wanting to leave either.
Yeah, me either. I get it. Oh my gosh, that was the one thing I said about that film is it was honest. So that's something I often thought, if I moved away, if I made mistakes here in this town, the town I've lived in since I was a teenager, really. Mm-hmm. If I stayed here and everybody who knows me now saw a change in me, would, not that I need to change a whole lot, really, but I mean. But I think we change slowly,
I think so.
I think
it's not drastic.
I'm a different person now than I was when I was 18, but it was a slow change.
Sure. Yeah. It's maturity. It's wisdom. It's life experiences.
But some people change overnight. Somebody who gives up drugs or alcohol or something, if they've had an issue with those things, and they give it up, they become a different person overnight, and the people around them are almost like gun shy until they realize, oh, you really have changed.
Right, and to the extent that you can go back and, what do they say in the 12-step programs? You have to go back and make amends. if you're going to do that. I mean, invariably you hurt people if you're going to have that kind of behavior. And so I think a lot of changing your life does go back and making amends to the people you hurted.
And that's if you bring that on yourself. But sometimes other people are forced to change. Sometimes there's a death in the family and roles have to change. Sometimes there's a divorce that you get blindsided with, and all of a sudden you know what's going to happen. So you have to have the courage to do that.
Or a horrible car accident, or coming down with some illness.
Mm-hmm.
I've had friends whose life literally changed overnight just by walking out into the crosswalk when somebody didn't see the stop sign.
Oh my gosh!
Have people had to change faith?
I'm sorry.
Have people had to change their faith? And then the new faith that they found, their new religion, they felt better about?
I can't say I've ever had anybody ever do that I'm familiar with. In terms of a drastic change of faith. And then I've known people who change their faith like most people change their shirts. It's a different one every week.
Now you have an interesting bio because you're a geologist, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with being a race car driver, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with being a philosopher, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with being an author. Well, a philosopher and an author go together. So are you changing, or are you these things simultaneously?
I think I do things serially rather than at the same time. One of the things I always wanted to do when I was a kid was I wanted to race cars. Obviously there wasn't an option, both cost and time and things like that. So I took that up later in life. But yeah, things that interest you, and for me, I tend to immerse myself. When something.
Are you a pilot?
Fascinating. I studied. No, God, thankfully not.
I said,
drive fast on the ground. You don't need to do that.
All right. The reason I'm asking is because on Facebook it looks like you're flying an airplane. What is that?
No, actually, I'm in a helicopter, and the left-hand seat is the passenger seat in a helicopter.
Oh, okay. The book is getting good reviews on Amazon. Look at this. Wow, you're doing good. When did the book come out?
It came out last fall.
Is it part of the Resuscitation, the Oracle of Wessex series? Is it part of that?
It is, yeah. That's the second part. The first book is called Resuscitation and All That Follows, and it basically follows Grady Moran for the first year after his accident. And the second book picks up where the first one left off, and it explores the same topic but in a different way. And again, the topic is, what would you do differently? And we can see now, and in the second book, you start to get some insights into why Grade is changing some of the things he changed. There's also a lot of, foreshadowing done in the first book that might not make any sense, but it all eventually gets explained.
This is a huge book. It says it's 504 pages long.
Large type, yeah.
When you're giving inspirational advice to young people, sometimes, the young people have a certain passion for a certain career in mind, and they have tunnel vision, where sometimes people will try to say, well, okay, but what if this doesn't work out? You need to have something else. And they'll say, no, this is all going to work out for me and I'm going to be fine. I don't need a secondary avenue. What do you say to them to try to get them to at least open their mind to that?
The advice I used to give my students when I was teaching in college was find something that you enjoy doing. Sit down, just think to yourself, what is it that I truly enjoy? And figure out a way to get paid to do it. And the truth is, it might not be something that's going to pay a lot of money, but if you actually enjoy what you're doing, maybe you don't need a lot of money. It's one of those things where, I think people that do things strictly for the money, they're miserable, and then you wind up spending a lot of money just to for the fact you're not happy.
Right.
So I mean, when I was in high school, the only two things that interested me was writing and science, and particularly geology. I really like geology, and I figured at the time I couldn't make a career as a writer. And so when I went to college, I studied geology. But the truth is, I enjoyed doing it. And I would tell my students, I said, I've never worked a day in my life. I get paid to go out and have fun every day.
Because you enjoy what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I don't think you need to really worry about making a lot of money. Granted, if you can find something that pays reasonably well, and if you're very good at what you do, typically it will pay pretty well. Mm-hmm. But to me, that's the most important thing, and most people don't do that. I mean, I think probably maybe 5% of my students were going after something that they actually enjoyed. The rest of them are going after something they thought would make them rich.
Mm-hmm. The book is called Resuscitation and All That Follows. Doug Oliver is our guest, and I wanted to take a moment just from the book and talk to you a little bit about your geologist and mineral researcher part, because much of what the future has or the present has been made of, in other words, yesterday's future is today, right? And much of what today is made out of is the minerals that you guys figured out could build. I mean, all these computers we use wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the minerals that geologists were able to find.
Exactly.
That's amazing. It's amazing to me. We don't realize how much of this computer I'm talking or looking at right now, which talking to, I guess we're talking through a computer somewhere along the way here, that it's all part of the fact that you guys figured out what different minerals do.
Yeah, and I think I read once where an iPhone contains something like 67 different elements in it. And just about every one of those elements came out of the ground in one way or another.
Isn't that amazing?
So, yeah, I mean, that's and the stuff I started looking for when I first started out in the business isn't what people are using anymore. We're using the parts of the periodic table that nobody ever even heard of, 20, 30 years ago. And so things like rare earth elements, I'm looking for carbon, not coal. I'm looking for graphite, because you can do all kinds of things with graphite.
I just find that all fascinating. Wow. And so does that play a role in the book? All of that understanding of the elements, does it play a role in your philosophy or in the book?
No, not at all. That's a completely different part of my life, unfortunately.
Well, you do.
I'm sorry.
You do talk about social aspects, though. I mean, you know some bad guys and you know good guys, and you've learned how to balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just part of living. I mean, you run across a pretty wide spectrum of people. Where I grew up in New Jersey was, if you could take The Sopranos and do a prequel back into the 1960s, that's where I lived.
Oh my. Oh my!
I essentially grew up with The Sopranos. I mean, when I first watched the TV show, I thought it was like watching home movies.
So, okay, but if the real versions of them could go back in time and relive their lives and avoid their mistakes, I don't know. Some of them probably would still be alive, I guess. Some of them, yeah.
They would, but none of the guys I knew, none of the wise guys I knew, had any reservations about what they were doing at all. They thought that the rest of us were fools. I mean, they thought that they were living the life.
Wow.
And so it was a very different existence, than what I see in Texas, probably what you see in Florida.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because I'm wondering, as people read the book and discuss with you, I mean, the book's been out since August, according to Amazon, and so when people give you feedback, are they expressing to you very personal stories? I mean, I'm sure that, hey, just this morning, your topic came up, and we were all kind of reliving something that we wondered if, and I even told the story of a mistake I'm glad I didn't make. I could have made a mistake, and I was glad I didn't. So it's one of those where I dodged a bullet, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we all do. I think all of us are here by the grace of God.
Yeah.
But as far as the reactions go, the two reactions I get the most, particularly from the baby boomers that read it, are that it's a trip down memory lane, and it doesn't matter where you grew up.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
I had a friend. Yeah, I had a friend in Modesto who read the book, and he says, I knew every single character in your book. We had variations of them in my high school as well. But the other responses I get is that, yeah, it made me think. It made me wonder what I would have done differently if I could do it all over again. And I've heard all different gamuts, in terms of things that they probably would have done differently.
Yeah.
But most of them involve taking the road not traveled. Some of them it was correcting mistakes, but most of them it was I really wish I had tried this when I had a chance.
I grew up on Long Island, and
Okay.
my dad was a policeman in New York City. And at 14 years old, I discovered the city. I mean, I had been there as a kid, but I discovered I could take the train and get in there. And so I was not allowed. I was not allowed. I went back with my son. In other words, I spent a lot of time in the city once I discovered I could do that. And so fast forward to October of 2016. In other words, last October, my son, 31 years old, says, Dad, you want to go to New York? So I said, sure. So we go to New York, and I'm showing him all of the old places. And I'm saying, look, there's old New York, there's new New York. I knew the difference, of course. And part of me was saying, gosh, I wasted a lot of time here. I don't know. I mean, I guess I can tell you. Do you remember the peep shows? I wasted a lot of money in the peep shows.
It's a form of education.
I'd like to read your memoir.
Yeah.
Well, how do you bridge the generations? Because you're a dad and you're a grandfather, and even though, your children and grandchildren have issues they think are totally different and the generation before won't understand, they're sort of the same.
Yeah, they are. One of my finest moments with my son, there was a Mark Twain quote. And the Mark Twain quote was, when I was 16 years old, I was convinced my father was the most ignorant man to ever walk the planet. And by the time I was 20, I was amazed how much he learned in 4 short years. and I finally, I've got a son probably the same age as your son, Larry, and he told me about 4 or 5 years ago, he says, I think you're right about this. And I thought, wow, there's a moment. But my son actually acknowledged that I might have known something.
That is
wow.
funny. That is funny.
That's great.
Well, you're a great interview. Thank you for being on our show. The book is called Resuscitation and All That Follows. It's getting good reviews on Amazon, and I know that you can buy it there because I found it on there. Is it available as a Kindle? Let me look real quickly. Is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's both hard copy or Kindle.
Okay.
And you're also giving people encouragement in your book. You're stating to them that if there is something that they want to change right now, they should go for it. They shouldn't be afraid. They should just go ahead and move forward.
Absolutely. The one thing about the baby boomers is we still have 20 years left on this planet. Make the most of it. If there are things that you haven't done yet, as long as they're reasonable, try them. Writing a book was on my bucket list, and so that's one of the things I knocked off last year. But I got other things I want to do too. But the main thing is stay in the game.
What are you going to do? What else do you want to do?
I still want to drive from Melbourne to Perth, Australia. That's one of the things I want.
Wow. That's a challenge.
And you're in New Jersey right now?
No, I'm in Texas right now.
In Texas. Oh, you made it a little bit of the way. You're getting closer to Australia. All right, let's see. I found it on Amazon, Resuscitation and All That Follows by Doug Oliver. Do you have a website, Doug?
Yeah, it's on Facebook. It's the author page for Doug Oliver. So you can if you want to come on there, we'd love to chat with you.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for being on the show with us today, and come back anytime. And good luck with your drive from Melbourne across Australia.
just remember to stay in the other lane.
Right. Oh, right. Thank you so much, Doug. All right, we'll be right back.
All right, thank you.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. On this Wednesday, times of clouds and sun. There'll be a couple of thunderstorms around during the afternoon hours, mainly a shower, though, at the coast. High 88 to 92. A shower and thunderstorm around Wednesday evening, then partly cloudy overnight, low 69 inland, 74 at the coast. For Thursday, times of sun and clouds with an afternoon thunderstorm around, the high 86 to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Here is your 30-second news brief. A gunman is in custody after a crisis situation lasting several hours at Orlando International Airport. Nobody was hurt. An Ocala woman hopes police find her mother-in-law's ashes and urn that were stolen over the weekend. The Florida legislature's $82.4 billion budget was sent to Governor Scott yesterday. He has 15 days to veto all or part of the spending plan. And Florida gas prices averaged $2.31 on Memorial Day, according to AAA. And that is your news brief from The Source.
Hi, this is Vanessa Lane Jennings with the Jennings Law Firm, located here in beautiful Ocala. Join me every single Friday at 10:30 for Legal Lane. We'll be discussing various legal topics such as family law, criminal law, contracts, and much more. So this is your chance to call in with your
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Sources are telling Fox News the president is expected to soon announce the U.S. will be pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, although a very senior administration official cautions the president has yet to make a final decision.
There are a lot of pressures here at home for the president to pull out because to adhere strictly to the protocols the president believes would put an